Hey everyone, welcome to Picture Your Soapbox, where I give you my commentary on the news of the day as reported by the Wall Street Journal. First up, in a follow-up to what I said yesterday about Hong Kong, the about 400 people now have been arrested by the Hong Kong police, and there's a bit of a siege still going on at the at Polytechnic University, and apparently there's still 100 protesters that still have yet to be arrested. So, and as I said yesterday, don't expect any other country to intervene to help Hong Kong. I mean, again, right next to China, so be like other countries trying to intervene to let Manhattan break away. It's it's just not going to happen. Next up, the United States shifted its decades-long stance of not recognizing Israel settlements in the West Bank as legitimate, but now President Trump has acknowledged that they have a right to be there. Obviously, the Israelis, including they both Prime Minister Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz, they both of them liked what Trump said. Nobody else did. Not the Europeans, not the Palestinians, no one. So it increasingly looks like it, that especially since Trump took office, it's Trump versus the world. But I mean, this is hardly a new thing, given that the rest of the world has continually intervened in to stop what the U.S. wants to do. If the U.S. brings something to the UN's most likely to say, "Nah, we're not gonna do what you want." Largely because there's 5 countries, U.S. included, that have they have veto power on in the UN. Those are the United States. Well, it was the Soviet Union, now Russia, Taiwan, although that was replaced by China, Britain, and France. So any one of those other 4 nations besides the United States can easily just say no to any UN resolution. So that's why the UN sucks, because the U.S. can't do anything if it goes to the UN. Then there's an article about how with the whole impeachment drama, the U.S.'s domestic institutions being eroded. First off, the Foreign Service, like Congress is messing a bit too far into the executive branch in this way because the Constitution reserves diplomacy and whatnot largely to the president, but Congress can still declare war and vote on treaties. So, by continually undermining the president's foreign affairs with investigating his reasons for firing and hiring ambassadors, it sort of undermines that constitutional separation of powers. The Intelligence Committee is in the Senate is still the intelligence committees have long been recognized as like the bipartisan committees in the Congress, while the others are solely partisan. Not anymore in the House. The Senate Intelligence Committee is still bipartisan, but not the House Committee. It's the Democratic Party has weaponized it since taking back the House of Representatives. So it's not so. This is irreparable damage. I guess they're not something to think about what could happen next time there's a Democratic president in the Republican House, kind of like how there was under President Clinton or President Obama. The FBI was also weaponized by Obama, and Congress is trying to eat away at the executive branch by tearing apart the FBI to find the reasons why James Comey was fired. You know why James Comey was fired as FBI director? Because he sucked and he was an Obama tool. And then finally, there's obviously the impeachment process itself. It's supposed to be a grave political matter that's like a last resort, but instead it's a matter of first resort. Like the first thing they're gonna do. It's nuts watching how like something that's supposed to be, serious matters now a circus. Right, next up, the progressives are now calling Asian Americans who don't like who don't like discrimination the worst kinds of Americans. Now you think you'd be the best kind of American to stand up against discrimination, or like okay, one of the best kinds of Americans, like up there with veterans and up there, right up there with veterans. Like people are fighting for discrimination or against discrimination. People are fighting for the American ideals. But because of the desperate push to get affirmative action into the U.S. legal code, the liberals and progressives now vilifying Asian Americans for standing up to this. Like there's that famous Harvard Harvard University case where the courts found that they discriminate against Asian Americans. That's clearly wrong, and yet they do it. Like, and for a while now, people have like tolerated it against whites, but now that it's against Asian Americans, people, I guess now it's against an ethnic minority, people are starting to care. I mean, okay, whatever gets people to care about getting rid of affirmative action, right? That's currently the government doesn't engage in affirmative action, but private institutions are allowed to by law. So like, well, not real. Well, they're not like explicitly allowed to, but like the government would say you have to discriminate by your race, or sure you can discriminate by race. It's just that they say that schools can take race into account when determining whether someone should get into school or not, which is implicit discrimination. So, well, really, actually, explicit discrimination. So yeah, the people, they're calling Asian Americans, or at least the ones suing Harvard, the worst kind of Americans. That's crazy, that the people who are fighting discrimination are called the worst kinds of Americans. Again, that's more like the best kind. The op-ed also highlights a few examples of racial discrimination laws that are meant to sneak it back into the legal code, like it was in the Deep South pre-1960s. How these new measures are failing. Like even in Washington State, like deep blue. Like if you thought California is deep blue, I think Washington State is arguably more deep blue than California. That's really saying something. And this state, of all states, decide to reject race-based discrimination. Like they put Asian Americans, forced them to put the proposed law on the ballot, and then they're also the group that helped strike it down. So, I mean, it was barely struck down, like not a very big margin of defeat, but nonetheless, it still was defeated. And also have same thing in California, like same exact thing, because of course it's California. So I personally think that if America really wants to be a colorblind nation, like if progressives really want to fight racism, they don't sneak racial quotas and affirmative action into the laws, either by hiding them in or making it blatant. Just don't. Get rid of those laws and voila, no more systemic racism, or whatever they're calling it these days. There's another article entitled "Halfway with Warren is Too Far," saying that that some people are saying that if Elizabeth Warren would become president, then Congress would likely stall more of her radical elements, like I don't know, like Medicare for all, wealth tax, that kind of stuff might not get pushed through. It might become sort of like obviously anti-free market laws, but something that people who are pro-free market could tolerate until they could vote her out of office. Yeah, no. I'm saying that we've been here before, like with JFK's expansion of he was for right to work laws, and that angered unions, which have pretty much as long as they've existed supported Democrats, and so his team advised him to find some other pro-union law to support so he could throw him a bone. He decided to allow public sector employees to unionize, but he didn't allow them to strike. This is for federal employees, and then obviously states and local officials followed suit, and some of those had permission to strike, and now public sector unions regularly threaten strike, whether it's legal or illegal. It just depends on what state or city they're in, and that's exactly why there's the whole public pension problems. Like, it cracks me up that places like Illinois and California are drowning in state debt, like state government debt, and the teachers, like in Chicago, I think it was like last month in Chicago, there's a big old strike because the teachers wanted a pay raise and a pension increase. When those are main economists and analysts agreed. Yeah, those pensions and paychecks are the main reason why Chicago and Illinois as a whole are drowning in debt. And same thing in California and several other blue states. So that was that kind of halfway measure to throw the unions a bone did not end up well. Neither did LBJ's his creation of Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is supposed to be for senior citizens, Medicaid for the disadvantaged, which includes senior citizens. So it's kind of odd that he gave them two different things to choose from. But Medicaid also added pregnant women, low income families, and the disabled. So initially politicians were like, well, we spend more on defense than we'll spend on this, so I guess it's kind of okay. Now, well, entitlement spending outnumbers outnumbers defense spending 4-1. So for every $4 we're pitching into welfare, defense only gets just $1 of the entire federal budget. So the point of this is that given history, it's possible that that even if Warren gets half what she wants or gets everything but like watered down halfway measures, it could still end up largely being disastrous. So even halfway is way too far. Better just not to vote for her. And then there's an article about given that in a lot of states, or pretty much every state, the attorney general is an elected official as opposed to an appointed one. The Democratic Party's election committees are trying to bar any pro-life candidates from running, or any Democratic one. So they've made it very clear that if you're a Democrat and you don't support Roe v. Wade, you don't support unlimited abortion, whether you're pro-life or you just have some reservations about no restrictions on it, then no support for you. Don't even bother running for office. Or at least under the banner of a Democrat. They say that in 2018, pro-choice candidates ran incredibly close races in red states Arizona, Georgia, and Texas, which is a nice way of saying they suck and they lost. So incredibly close means you still lost. Boo-hoo. Go take your radical agenda to some other planet. Then North Carolina, it's been well publicized that North Carolina is like king gerrymander, but and now the courts are saying the courts have allowed North Carolina to redraw their maps, and so currently the Republicans have a 10-3 majority in the North Carolina House of Representatives delegation, and then so they tried to write a new map that was a little more fair to the Democrats. They said no, and Democrats have said that they want it. They said the new maps the fair map, we need a 6-7 map or a 7-6 map or even a 6-6-1. This appears to be a 5-8, which doesn't quite guess where we need to go. This Democratic lawmaker pretty much said that that until they have a decisive majority in North Carolina's House delegation, that ain't good enough. They literally just said that. And part of the problem is that Democrats tend to be clustered in cities, Republicans are more spread out. So maybe instead of trying to gerrymander like this, then they could just bust their supporters out to other regions or forcibly move them. Illegal, yes, but maybe they could convince them to willingly move. Hey Democrats, you want to have total control of the state? Beat it. Go to the suburbs or the rural areas. So yeah, and then finally there's an article entitled "America's Inner City Cartels," basically saying Americans are pretty shocked to learn that a Mexican drug cartel killed American civilians in Mexican territory. But that kind of thing happened. But we have our own little Mexico problem in the inner cities of major cities. By the way, most major cities have pretty strict gun laws, so gun laws don't work. But the main villain is the legacy of slavery, the legacy of Jim Crow, systemic racism, blah 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 blah. This article saying, no, 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 no. After like decades of, or dare I say centuries of liberal rule in big cities, and pretty long time for a lot of main cities of minority of black political rule. Like if Democrats and liberals are right, then they're probably fine. Problem is, it's not. So it's clearly something that's not. It's clearly not a racial issue there. If like if changing the race of the government is not an effective means of fixing the problems. So yeah, a lot of crimes go unsolved in big cities. Police departments aren't recruiting as much because Black Lives Matters has pretty much barred oh, has effectively barred police departments from policing some neighborhoods because they know they'll get public backlash. So yeah, it's a really big problem is that a lot of these social justice laws that are causing the problems are promoted by people who are in nice gated safe communities. So I think that all those SJWs, the social justice warriors, should move to the inner city. Every single one of them, all of them, move to the inner city. Somewhere, be it I don't know, New York, Boston, St. Louis, Philadelphia, wherever. Pick a city, and once they figure out and once they see what it's really like, they'll change their policy. They'll change their proposed policies in no time. That's all I got for you today on Patriot or Soapbox. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great daily content.